All right, today we're going to be taking a look at a very budget-friendly watch. You can pick it up for right around $250, but if you look at the technical specifications and if you look at some of the performance features of this watch, you're going to find things that you typically only find in luxury watches costing thousands of dollars or more. So why is this watch so affordable? How did SWC put this together? We're going to be checking out all that in today's review of the SWC Arc GMT. Hey guys, welcome back to Just the Watch. My name's Dave. I live in Japan and I love to collect affordable watches. And when it comes to affordable watches, micro brands are really pushing the boundary of what you can expect to pay for the price. And one brand that has been at kind of the forefront of this sort of specifications arms race is the Swiss Watch Company. Well, SWC is based in the United States. All of their watches are Swiss-made, manufactured in Switzerland. In fact, the owner's son is a watchmaker over there. So this is kind of a family business, and that's one of the ways they're able to get their costs down so low. So this particular watch, the Arc GMT, which we're looking at today, as the name would suggest, is a GMT watch. It allows you to tell the time in 2 different time zones, and it does that in kind of an interesting way by incorporating a GMT window instead of a GMT hand. But when it comes to the technical specifications of this watch, SWC really went above and beyond what most other brands are doing in this price range. The watch is made of stainless steel, but it has a hardening treatment on it. The dial and hands are filled with BGW9 Grade A Swiss Superluminova, which is one of the brightest compounds you can get. And perhaps most impressively, this watch features a sapphire crystal that has 16 layers of anti-reflective coating on it, making it practically disappear. And Swiss Watch Company is the only brand that I know of that is putting this level of anti-reflective treatment on their watch crystals at any watch priced at under $1,000. That said, there are a number of reasons why I think this watch is priced so low. There is a big difference between this watch and a luxury watch. I think a lot of that is particularly seen in some of the design choices and obviously in the movement that's selected here. This is a fairly low-cost Swiss Ronda quartz movement. And while the design on this watch is good, it's fun and interesting and fairly easy to read, it doesn't have the same level of refinement that these established luxury brands have in their watches. Now, SWC did send this watch over to me to keep, which is why you saw the paid promotions flag at the beginning of this video. However, other than the watch itself, I did not receive any compensation from SWC, nor did they have any input into the content of this review. So let's start diving in a little bit deeper and talk about some of the features of this watch. Other than the fact that this watch features a relatively low-cost Swiss quartz movement from Ronda, all of the technical features of this watch are incredibly impressive. You're getting 100 meters of water resistance, a stainless steel case that has been treated with a hardening treatment to make it more resistant to scratches, with excellent polishing and brushing done on that stainless steel case. The dial features a very strong application of BGW9 Grade A lume. And perhaps most impressive of all, this watch features a sapphire crystal that has 16 layers of anti-reflective coating. To my knowledge, no other brand out there offers a watch with a crystal that is this clear and this anti-reflective for under $300. And all of these features really support this watch's identity as a field watch. This is a very durable, very legible watch that features modest proportions that make it very unobtrusive for active work out in the field, with the added benefit of a GMT complication allowing you to see the time in a second time zone. I really like the dimensions that they've gone with here, with a 38mm diameter, a 45mm lug to lug, and only 9mm of thickness. This makes the watch extremely comfortable to wear, and proportionally it will fit a wide range of wrist sizes. I have a 7.5-inch wrist, which is a little bit on the larger side. I typically favor watches around 40 to 42 millimeters, but I didn't really have any problem at all with the look of this watch, at least with the watch head at 38 millimeters. However, I did feel that the included strap was too small for my wrist. I'm typically on the second to last hole on the strap, and there's not a lot of tail left after that, so it kind of wears a little bit awkwardly on the underside of my wrist. Oftentimes the tail of the strap will kind of pop loose, and this is an issue that SWC has acknowledged. They state on their website that the strap won't fit anyone with a wrist size larger than 7.5 inches, and if you do have one, if you tell them when you order the watch, they'll include a different strap. Now, I'm not sure if it's the same style of strap, but just a different size, or if it's a different strap altogether, but if you do have a 7.5-inch wrist or larger, I would recommend requesting that larger strap. Okay, now I want to circle back and talk a little bit more about that anti-reflective treatment and the lume on this watch in just a minute, but first let's spend some time examining the design of the watch. I really like the overall style of this watch, and I think there's a lot of really good design choices that went into this, along with a couple of design choices that I'm not so on board with that sort of limit the functionality of the watch. The most interesting feature of this watch is that GMT window. This is a very unusual way to handle a GMT complication. Rather than having a fourth hand, you have something that's very similar to a date window, except rather than showing the date, it shows you the hour in a second time zone. It's very unobtrusively tucked away at the 6 o'clock position. However, I found it both more difficult to read and more difficult to set than the more common fourth GMT hand way of implementing the GMT complication. The text in that window is pretty tiny, and somewhat frustratingly, when you're setting the GMT time, rather than that GMT wheel jumping hour by hour and kind of being connected to the minute hand on the main dial, it can be set completely independently and freely. And this means it can be very difficult to get it to really line up perfectly with the minute hand on the watch. What I typically had to do was first set the main hour and minute to the hour that the time is, then adjust the GMT wheel so that it matched the hour on my second time zone, and then go back to the main time and set the minute. This is a little bit cumbersome, but it would be especially frustrating if you were traveling between multiple time zones and wanted to keep resetting the GMT time to different things. Another issue I have with this implementation is that GMT window seems to have effectively replaced the date window on the watch so that you don't have a date. And while I like to have a date on all of my watches, I particularly want to have a date on a travel watch, on a GMT watch when I might be moving between different time zones, and sometimes lose track of that. On the positive side, I really like the choice to go with 12 Arabic numerals around the dial in sort of your classic field watch style, but they've done this in sort of a more playful, somewhat minimalist look. There's an excellent use of colors with a base color and an accent color chosen. This one is the Glacier colorway, and the dial is sort of an off-white color with a hint of blue in it. The numbers have a blue outline, enabling you to see them clearly against that dial, with orange accents on the 12-hour indexes going around the outside of the dial, the second hand, and the text on the GMT window. But what's really cool is the dial itself. The dial shape is this sort of concave, bowl-like shape where the middle of the dial is sunk down a little bit and then the edges rise up smoothly, almost touching the crystal. This is a really cool and interesting look, and in addition to the dial shape, they also decided to go with a sandwich dial, so the 12 Arabic numerals are actually cut out from the dial, revealing a loomed portion underneath. Finally, they've gone with just an excellent handset with very finely cut, polished syringe-shaped hands that are perfectly proportioned, really elevate the look, and again, making this watch feel like it's a much more expensive watch than it actually is. The same can also be said for the case finishing. There's some really great craftsmanship on display here with the brushwork and the polishing that they've done on the bevels. Those polished accents really give you a lot of light play, and the distinction between the polished and brushed portions on the case are razor sharp. And all of these aspects combine to make this a really sharp looking watch. Now, despite this, there was one other design choice that I didn't particularly appreciate, and that is that on most of the colorways, including this Glacier colorway, there are no individual minute markings on the dial. You only have markings for the 12 hours, which makes it difficult to read and set the time accurately. Now, interestingly enough, on two of the colors that they did, the gray blue and the sea glass, they did include minute mark. And so on those two colorways, it's much easier to read the time, and I would definitely be leaning towards one of those two as my first picks, primarily because of that. I'm not really sure why they decided to include those minute markings only on those two colors and not on all of them. That may be a personal preference thing, because without those individual minute markings, the watch does look cleaner and maybe a little bit more playful. All right, to round this out, let's go back and check out exactly how good that anti-reflective coating is and how the lume performs after dark. This watch features a sapphire crystal with 16 layers of anti-reflective coating, making it incredibly clear to the point that the crystal pretty much disappears most of the time. In many lighting conditions, it looks as though there is no crystal at all and like you're looking straight at the dial of the watch. This level of anti-reflective treatment is typically associated with high-end luxury watches like pieces from Omega. When I took this watch outside and compared it to my Laco Casablanca, which I believe doesn't have any anti-reflective coating on its sapphire crystal, the difference in clarity was very noticeable, which really is a great feature for your field watch, especially if you're going to be walking through forests where you're often going to catch the reflections from trees and sunlight. However, this level of anti-reflectivity is not accomplished without some compromises. In order to get the crystal this clear, they not only had to apply anti-reflective coating to the underside of the sapphire crystal, which is fairly common. A lot of watch brands will do that. They also took the step to apply anti-reflective coating on the top of the crystal as well. And this is the only way you're going to get this extreme level of clarity with a sapphire crystal. The issue is that if you have a layer of anti-reflective coating on top of your sapphire, that anti-reflective coating can get scratched, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a sapphire crystal in the first place, because a scratch in your anti-reflective coating is going to be just as annoying as a scratch in the crystal itself, and both a scratch in a crystal and a scratch in the coating on top of a crystal are going to be very difficult to repair. Now, to mitigate this, SWC went a step further and applied a sapphire coating on top of the anti-reflective coating, which is on top of the sapphire crystal, which also has anti-reflective coating under it. So the result feels like this kind of mad scientist attempt to get the ultimate crystal that's completely clear and very scratch-proof. It's probably the best implementation you're going to get, but even still, I've had other watches that have sapphire coatings on top of the crystal, and I have seen those scratch before. So a sapphire coating is not as scratch resistant as the sapphire crystal itself. And I kind of almost wonder at this point why they didn't just settle for a mineral crystal if they were going to be putting all these coatings on top of it, especially since mineral is less reflective than sapphire, and then you would have even greater anti-reflective properties. Anyways, all that said, it looks amazing, but it might scratch, so be careful. Finally, I want to highlight the lume on this watch because they went with BGW9 Grade A, which is kind of similar to C3X1 in that it's an extended brightness formulation of BGW9. BGW9 has a pretty crisp white color in the daylight and a very bright blue in the dark, and I tend to think it looks a little bit cooler than the green glowing C3. And SWC has kind of been known for having excellent lume on their watches, so I was happy to see that followed up here. Arabic numerals like this tend to be very difficult to get to glow very brightly, but they managed to do it here. When I ran this one through my J-Score testing system, it came out with a score of 8, which is an acceptable score for a dive watch and an extremely good score for a field watch. All right, so let's kind of wrap this up and let me see if I can summarize what I think about this watch. I think first and foremost, SWC is giving you an amazing amount of value packed in here. This watch really does give you a taste of high-end watchmaking at a really affordable price. I know a lot of people probably aren't too happy with the choice of a quartz movement. SWC does offer some other watches with similar features to this with automatic movements. Those tend to run closer to $500. But I really like that they're giving us this sort of ultra affordable $250 version that still keeps these incredible specifications. That said, I think some of the design elements here need some work, especially on the readability front, and that strap is a concern if you have larger wrists. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Thank you guys for watching. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this watch. And I'm particularly curious what people think about that anti-reflective treatment. How important is that to you? Would you trade some of the scratch resistance of sapphire for the added clarity? I think for me personally, I tend to prefer a watch to only have the anti-reflective treatment on the underside because I really don't like the look of scratches on my watch crystals. But it is really cool seeing a crystal this clear. Finally, if you're interested in picking up this t-shirt, you can get it at justthewatch.com on my website. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.